You can't trap me to a book. You can't give me a name. So whatever you call me, I become. And so if you are walking in sickness and what you need is health, the moment you call I am that I am that I am becomes divine health. And then you come out of sickness. And then somebody else is going through poverty. And then he doesn't know what to do. And he calls on I am that I am. And suddenly an I that I am become a wisdom that produces wealth. And then somebody else is going through crisis and limitations. And he doesn't know what to do. And he calls on I am that I am. Now, if you are in isolation calling on him, you may think you have found him. And so you who found him in the place of sickness, you will meet the one who found him in poverty. And you will discover you are calling on the same being. But that same being means a million things. You will now discover that, oh, there is a being that dwells in Zion. And he's the reference of all reality. Because while we are in this auditorium, God means over 100 things to 100 people. Meanwhile, it's the same person we are calling upon. Because he is I am that I am. Reality dwells in him. And it doesn't stop there, because the operation of I am is not just to meet your need. What it actually means is that he is before time. That means time is in him. So you can't find a reference outside of him. Even what you call a reference is still a place on his inside, because there is something bigger than time. And when he wanted to show his excellency, I'm trying to tell us why we worship him. When he wanted to show his excellency, he carried Moses in the spirit. And Moses stood in the spirit and he looked and he said, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. The question that Moses himself could not answer is, what was before the beginning? And before the heavens and the earth was created, where was he? It means there is something bigger than space, and there's something bigger than time. The reason you are able to have time is because God exists. The reason you are able to have space is because God exists. Now, if you discover this, you will now come out of your Range Rover and put it one side and say, Abba, Father. Because both you and your car and your house, you are inside God. If you wake up, you may think that you are smart. That's why you are succeeding. You will now discover that everything that comes out of you is still inside God. You will not say, I got a connection with this person. I got a connection with that person. All the people you got connected with are inside God. And so when you become wise, you will now discover he is the reference. Because he's the reference, the only thing you can do is to worship. Because you may wake up and say, I give 1 million. Both you and the 1 million is still inside him. Before you gave it, it was inside him. Because he's I am that I am. So the reason we worship him is because he defines our essence. Outside of him, you have no definition. And so when you discover he defines your essence, you will quit defining yourself by where you are. There are many Nigerians, all they want to do is to stand on London Bridge and snap so that their friends will see that they came to London. Because that is what defines them. They feel more important because they came to London. There are many people that what defines them is the car they drive. And so when they come out of that car, they make a show of the car. You need to see what they drive. That is good, but it's mundane. Because there's a realm where they don't need car. In the realm of the I am, they travel by thought. That's why both... I'm trying to humble us. As human beings, we are big in our head. We are big. You flew in a first class and you crossed your leg with a bottle of wine because you want your friend to see. Well, it's only your friend that will be moved. Because there are other creatures that will not be moved because you flew in a plane. The reason is because they can carry that plane on their finger. They don't travel by plane. They travel by the whirlwind. Because in the realm where God dwells, you don't need a vehicle to travel. Whatever you think, you come there. Because you are living in the I am. And so when you understand what worship is, you will now discover that worship is bigger than a song. The reason we worship with a song is because there is no way we can communicate the overwhelming excellency of God. And so when we come before him, anything that sounds good, we usher it to him. Because we have come to discover that everything is in him. And he's the one that gives relevance to things. And so on the strength of worship, we stop evaluating ourselves by what we have. We start evaluating ourselves by what he calls us. Because it's what he calls you that is your essence. In case he has not called you anything, it means you are floating like a balloon. Because your meaning is what he calls you. And so you will come to that altar until he defines you. And this will not stop in time. Because even in heaven, when John was carried to heaven, he said he saw the 24 elders. They had a crown and they sat on a throne, but they will never sit on that throne. Because when the glory of God appears, they fall on their faces and they cast their crown. They say, holy. We know we are wearing crowns and sitting on thrones, but this is not what defines us. You are the one that defines us. Because you are the meaning of existence. When we worship God, it's a statement to us that outside of God we are nothing. Regardless of what we have and regardless of where we are. This is why worship concerts like this are very important. Because it's a reminder that man without God is dust. The system may deceive you. Because the system is created in such a way that pride can be weaved into your soul. Vanity can be weaved into your soul. Because what the system does is that it injects lust into you. It injects vanity into you. And a point will come, you will hit your chest and say, me. Oh, when you come to where immortals dwell, you will discover that outside of him you are dust. And the reason you can still breathe is because he is I am. And so in the place of worship, we come before him and we salute his excellency. Oh, Abba Father, I know that I earn £1 million, but you are my Ebenezer. I know that I have everything I need, but you are my help and my stronghold. The day will never come where I will put my trust in what I possess, because both me and what I possess is in you. You are the source. When you walk in an advanced civilization like this, it will be quick for you to forget that there is a God that puts breath on your nostrils. When you walk in an advanced civilization like this, it will be quick for you to think that, oh, because you have never had malaria since you were born. Those of us in Africa, from 4 months, we know the meaning of malaria. So it's easy for us to come close to God. But it's possible that you are 30 years old and you've never had malaria. So when they talk to you about sickness, you say, what does it mean? A day will come when this body, you will pull it off. Because it's somebody that put it on you. And when that time comes, you can't struggle. He will pull it off you. And your spirit will come out of you. And you will discover that even though you didn't fall sick, he was still I am. Because what you are wearing, he put it on you. And when that day comes, nobody can fight. The doctors himself will say, he gave up. Because they don't want to share in the blame. That's why when people die, they say he gave up. Meanwhile, all of you were wrestling with life, but they say he gave up. What happened is that you didn't give up, you were summoned. Because when you came here, you were sent. And when your time elapses, you will be summoned. And if you like, be sitting in a Rolls Royce, you will still be summoned. If you like, be in the hospital, you will still be summoned. Because there's an immortal. Oh, he doesn't need your permission. The Bible calls him the sovereign one. He reigns eternal. He sits above the cycles of eternity. Anything he says is law. And you are because he said so. And the day he withdraws that word, you will vanish. That's why people walk today and say, God does not exist. He's too big to respond. He doesn't need to prove himself. That's why when the Bible was written, they didn't take time to justify his existence. They said in the beginning, God. Whether you choose to believe or not, that's your business. He's too big to explain himself. He owns the earth. But when God opens your eyes and you know, the most reasonable thing to do is to worship. So we don't worship God because of what he does. We worship God because of who he is. That's why whether he gives you the money or not, hallowed be thy name. Whether he gives you the healing or not, hallowed be thy name. Because you don't worship him because of what he gives. You have already found out that everything you are is him. The reason you exist is because of him. So he has done too much already for what he does to be the reason for worship. You come to worship him because of his majesty, because of his excellency. So the first reason we worship and praise God is because we have discerned him. We know that we look intelligent, but outside of God, our intelligence will count for nothing. We know we are smart, but outside of him, our intelligence will count for nothing. And so with everything we are doing, we still come to him and say, Abba, Father. The first reason we worship God is because of who he is. That's why you are gathered. And who he is what defines your existence. The second reason we worship God is because we have seen his love. You didn't ask him before you were created. The Bible said, in the beginning, Genesis chapter 1, verse 26, it said, God said, let us make man in our own image, after our likeness. Now, you are enjoying the earth. You go to Dubai, you snap like this. You didn't know that there was a conversation in a court in Zion, where the Father spoke to the Son, and the Son spoke to the Spirit, and the Spirit spoke to the Father, and they said, let us create you. We want this one too to experience existence. That's why you came. You came because of the love and the benevolence of God. You didn't come because you argued with God. You didn't come because you insisted that you must come. Because if you didn't come, you wouldn't even have known. But He chose to give you the experience of existence because of His love. And when you came into the world, you learned so many sweet things. And you went on your own and forgot Him. The Bible said we all, like sheep, have gone astray. Every one of us choose the way of sin and iniquity because we came into the world and we became smart and creative. We came into the world and we became very intelligent, and so many things began to move us, and we did what we did, and we went the way of rebellion. God had the right to kill humanity, but even at that, He didn't. He went back to the court again. That place He was, when He said, let us make man, He went back there and said, the human race have abandoned us. What do? We can kill them and start another creation. But His love said no. Meanwhile, there are 4 things that define the justice of God. The first thing that defines the justice of God is the wrath of God. The wrath of God insists that every iniquity must be punished, and the punishment for iniquity is death. The second thing that defines the justice of God is the love of God. And why the wrath of God say you must die, the love of God say you must not die. And if you don't die, God will deny Himself, because He would have become unjust, and it's impossible for God to be unjust. And so what God decided to do was to introduce the equation of mercy, because mercy prevails over judgment. And the way mercy enacted His oracle is that God Himself decided to become man, so that He will die for man and give man a place among gods. And so what He did was that He left His throne. The same God that we discovered is I am that I am, that we worship, decided to become man. It's just like your pig misbehaved, and you are supposed to kill your pig. And the only thing you can do to redeem your pig is to become a pig. Imagine what it is to become a pig for one day. I hope you know the experience of man with God. The Bible says He dwells in light that is unapproachable. The glory of God is so much that even the angels can't come close to Him. The brightness is His excellency and majesty is beyond human comprehension. When the 24 elders see Him, they fall on their faces. Meanwhile, they have been there before the earth was created, and they can't look at Him because of the excellency. When Ezekiel saw Him in Ezekiel chapter 2 verse 1, he said he fell like a dead man. When Daniel saw Him, he fell like a dead man. When John saw Him, he fell because the brilliance was too much. Now, if I see you drive a good car, I will admire it. I will admire it again. After 3 times, I won't. Because this glory, it fades. But the glory of God is the excelling glory. It doesn't fade. You can look at God like this for eternity. You will not be tired. If you see somebody wear a tuxedo suit, you look at him and, wow, this is lovely. You will turn again. Wow. After 3 times, if he likes, if you do like this, you will not. This is a glory that fades. You see somebody, you say, wow, this guy is handsome. Wow, this lady is handsome. Wait until you marry the person. You will be in the same room. The person will be saying, darling, look at my hair. You say your hair is beautiful. You are focusing on your job. Because this glory, it fades. It's mundane. But the glory of God does not fade. The angels have been looking at Him before the foundation of the world. They are not yet tired. But because of the love of God, what He did was that He took off the garment of glory. And He wore flesh, the flesh that we carry, the bodies of flesh, the mundanity of flesh. He wore it and He walked on the earth for 33 years. And He didn't just vanish to heaven. They nailed Him like a criminal on the cross. And while He was on the cross, He was without sin. He was without offense. But what He wanted to do was to give you a way of escape. And so while He was on the cross, He included you in Him. And by doing it, He took your sins upon Him and He put His righteousness upon you. So that when you show up again, the judgment you deserve, you will not deserve it. So when we come to worship God, we come to worship God because we know we qualify for death. But instead of dying, He died for us. And when he died for us, he gave us his life. This is why when a man comes to worship God, he forgets what he's wearing. Oh, no, no. That's the last place to remember you were wearing a good dress. Sometimes when you want to worship God, the only way you can do it to be reasonable is to lie on the floor. This is why worship is not a song. Worship is actually a statement of gratitude that flows out of your spirit like a river. Because you have discerned that what he has done for you, if they gave you 1,000 years, you can't repay. And so sometimes when you come, the only way you can worship is to cry. When the glory descends, you will just find yourself crying. That tears is 1,000 songs. Because in the realm of Zion, when they articulate your worship, they are looking for the element of gratitude that is on your inside. Because somebody may be singing, but it's a show. Meanwhile, somebody else may be crying, and the tears are 1,000 songs. And what the angels do is that, he said, the prayers and the tears of the saints, they are stored in heaven as odors in golden vials. Because every time God looks upon that tears, he sees a heart of gratitude. And so worship is beyond a good sound. It's a heart posture that is broken before God. It's a heart posture that have realized what God has done, and on the strength of that is willing to surrender. Is to surrender. That's why sometimes worship migrates from crying, it becomes service. Total surrender to God. But when you come to the UK, sometimes there is cold, so people can't come to church. Sometimes they want to watch online. I enjoy the service online. Oh man. If you have a legitimate thing to do, that's good. But if you don't have any legitimate thing to do, whatever it takes, you will come and lie down. Just to let him know that I am grateful. Oh, I'm grateful. Sometimes, oh my God. A man can come before God, and sometimes he doesn't even know what to say. And so he's quiet. That silence in the spirit is louder than a trumpet. Because when God checks him, he knows that he's overwhelmed with gratitude. What will he say? And so his silence in the courts of heaven is an alarm of thanksgiving. This is why you have to be discerning, to be able to walk with this spirit. Oh, he's a wise God. He's a wise God. He's checking your heart every day to find out how grateful you are. And when you show your gratitude in the spirit, it becomes worship. There are times when you show up and you are overwhelmed. All you can do is to remove your shoe and start dancing. Somebody will look at you and say, oh, coordinate yourself. Come on. Coordinate. When David was dancing, Micah, the daughter of Saul, looked at him and said, don't you know you are a king? David looked at him. I'm a king among men, not among spirits. Among spirits, I'm a servant. He said, your father Saul did not make me king. David danced until his apron fell off. He didn't notice. Because what he was doing that time was not a show, it was worship. That's why sometimes you dance until you forget the lyrics. Sometimes you dance until you go out of tune. The reason is because you have moved from the tune of the keyboardist. You have entered the tune of Zion. Because you remember the pit where God took you from. And the only way you can follow that frequency is to dance without coordination. There are times when you dance until sweat comes out of you like a river. All of that is a testimony in the spirit that this man is grateful. We worship God because we have discerned the love of God. Our generation is a godless generation. We are too busy pursuing things. And every time we come before the Lord, we are asking 1,000 questions and making 1,000 demands. Because what we were looking for before was big until God answered. The moment God answered, that thing became too small. And we begin to look for the next one. Meanwhile, those who are wise, as they are yet thanking God, God is producing the other one. Because a man who is grateful moves the hand of God. Why do we worship? We worship because we have discerned the love of God. And number 3, why do we worship? We worship because worship is a weapon. There are princes in darkness that want you to die. There are many forces fighting against your existence. There are many powers that rule different territory. The operation may be different. In Africa, witchcraft manifests in poverty and wickedness. But it's not only in Africa. When you come to the West, sometimes it manifests as lawlessness and wardom. And so you find a generation, everybody is struggling with lust. Every day you hear of divorce cases. People, families can't couple and live together anymore. The devil is fighting them. If they have a holiday for 3 days, and if they have a break for 3 days, and you don't go on holiday, they will fall into depression. Because their soul is hanging on a balance. And so every time there is 1 week holiday, they are looking for where to go for. Because they need a lot of distraction to be able to keep their soul in order. Because if you don't, there is depression. You find strange things happening to the minds of people because they are demons, they are wicked spirits that want to make sure they frustrate your existence. But when you worship, when you praise, when you sing and you dance, what you are doing is that you are fighting in the spirit. That's why in 1 Chronicles 20 verse 20, what shall we do? He said, let the singers take the instrument and sing and go to war. How do you go to war with a cymbal? How do you go to war with a guitar? Are you all right? But when they were going, as they were playing those sounds, they were energizing the angels. And suddenly, 3 nations turned against themselves and hacked themselves to death. Do you think you can fight all your enemies? Oh, there are people fighting you now who you don't even know. You didn't offend them in any way. Somebody just talked to somebody about you somewhere and they heard. And they started running with that word that you are proud. And you don't even know them. Even when they meet you, some will meet you, they will not know you are the one. But they are fighting to annihilate your existence. Not because you offended them, but because God is raising you up. There are many forces fighting you that you are not even aware. There are certain people that the devil is not even dealing with them. He's waiting for their children. You give birth to the first child, autism. Second child, autism. Is your name autism? But there are wicked spirits. And then you find all kinds of things happening. Which one will you fight? I know by the principle of faith you can command the mountain to go. What if your mountain is 1,000,000 mountains? How many will you remove? Because the warfare is too much. Is it about stray bullets? You go to work, you are coming back. A young man went to smoke and then he comes to stand and start shooting. In the US, in 2022 alone, over 22,000 people died of stray bullet. Because somebody just comes to the mall and starts shooting. You go to the mall to buy what you will eat. And then another madman enters the mall and begins to shoot sporadically. Which of them will you fight? Because the battles are many. The general purpose machine gun in the spirit is to worship God. Because when you start worshiping God, the angels are mobilized. You don't need to know who your enemy is. You don't need to know the ones that are circumstantial. You don't need to know the ones that are coincidental. You don't need to know the ones that are deliberate. The more you worship, the more angels are mobilized. And your life begins to go forward and upward only. And people will say, how are these things happening? You are just worshiping God. Because when you worship God, you provoke the jealousy of God. He will prove himself in your life. That's how God works. When they went to Jericho, there was no way they could conquer Jericho. It was an impregnable fortress. All of a sudden, God gave them a strategy. He said, go around the city for 6 days and blow the trumpet once. On the 7th day, go around 7 times and blow the trumpet 7 times. And the wall of Jericho sank. They didn't try to pull it down. The wall sank. When we begin to worship, angels begin to fight. The way to mobilize the jealousy and the faithfulness of God is through the instrumentality of worship. This is why those who worship are invincible. I wish I had time to teach you how things work. There are different things that Jesus said fight people that stand with him. If you are a witch doctor, no problem. They have their own principle. This one is for Christians. Witches have the way they survive. But if you are a Christian, this is our arsenal. Jesus said you will contend with mountains. Mountains are forces that limit you from going forward. You have all the certificates, but you can't be established. You are wondering why they are mountains. And when you are done with mountains, Jesus said there is the wind and the wave. The wind and the wave will allow you make progress. But after 30 years of succeeding, it will now come to check your foundation. Because the wind and the wave will not stop you from progressing. It will uproot you after you have progressed. And so you hear of a family going for holidays and they have accident and 6 people dies. And you are wondering, what is that? They are the wind and the wave. There are different kinds of battles we fight. Some are